First of all, I just would like to thank L.Somi Roy for giving me this opportunity in this first session. The listener, a 4-day festival of orality held from Monday, 6 February 2023 to the 9 February 2023 at this Chorus Repertory Theatre. And the first session of this workshop will be delivered on the topic preservation, archiving, access, and intellectual property rights of tradition. And I think this is one of the most important time for Manipur oral literatures also. And it will be delivered by Professor Shobhana Chelya, Indiana University. Before this session starts, I just would like to briefly introduce about some professionals about the Shobhana Chelya speakers of today. Shobhana Chelya is a distinguished professor of linguistics and Associate Dean of Research and Advancement at the College of Information, University of North Texas. And her research focused on documentation of the Tibeto-Burman languages of northeastern states of India. She was the program director of U.S. National Science Foundation's documenting endangered language program from 2012 to 15. And she is currently partnering with individuals and academic institutions in India to create a state-of-the-art and archive for the long-term preservation and access of language documentation materials. This archive, the computational resource of South Asian language, is hosted at the University of North Texas Digital Library. And I'm very happy to say that Professor Shobhana Chelya, she is also one of the very pioneer grammarian of Manipur, especially for Meitei. She has a publication called A Grammar of Meitei by Motundi Grotter at 1997. And this book is one of the very important and foundation book of the grammar of Meitei, especially in the field of linguistics all across the world. And for today, she will be talk on this preservation archiving related to the Mary Berkeley Corsal at University of North Texas Dento. This talk introduced to Corsal archive and highlights the benefits of digital archiving, not only for preservation, but also for sharing these cherished traditions with both local and global audiences. Potential applications of archiving materials will be discussed, such as involving youth in cultural activities, developing educational materials, and promoting artists. I think this should be one of the most important for the young artists of Manipur, those who are working in the professional, as a professional in the performing arts sections. So this Corsal will also be having a very good opportunity for all of us for making archive in this portal. And I hope in this first workshop, and Professor Shobhana Chelya will deliver a wonderful presentation here. I would like to call upon our respected, my madam also, she's also, and want to deliver this beautiful session for the first session. Please.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm hand over to you.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you, Somi, for the invitation to come back to Manipur and be part of the listener. It's been a long time in planning, and you made it happen. Last night was wonderful, so polished and also very warm. Very nice vibe, and I'm sure the rest of the listener will be similar. So I'm really happy to come and speak about this topic because this is what I've been working on for the past it seems like about 10 years. So I think I started actually 2012. I started thinking about this, noticing that there's just all through Manipur, if you look at, the indigenous communities here, if you go to Chandel, for example, and you look at the Lamkang, the Anal, the Monsang, list anywhere in any one of the districts in Manipur, communities are working on their own languages and collecting information. They're putting it on YouTube, they're putting on nowadays on TikTok, and it's on Facebook groups and everything. There's a groundswell of interest in language and in the preservation of their oral histories and their folklore. Kids are realizing, like people in their 30s and below, that they have a choice. They don't have to lose their language and culture. And I've been working with the Lamkang community, and I love this pretty slide that I use quite often because it shows the different generations that are working on the preservation and access to their language and the culture and through language. So on the right-hand side is Beshot Kular, and the reason I'm pointing him out is because he does, he is not a linguist, he is just really passionate about language. He's been going around the Lamkang community, recording folk songs and folk tales, like what we're doing here, we're listening to folk tales. He's been recording them. He puts them on these USB sticks, puts them in this transistor radio, and he passes them out in the community and says, listen to us, listen to our culture, and listen to our history through that. And then on the left-hand side, on the top, is a young scholar, Sumshot Kular, who is now actually doing her PhD at my university. She got a master's in linguistics. She said, we have to do something about doing a dictionary for our language, standardizing orthography. And the other two have been working with us as well. Daniel Tolong does a lot on orthography work. And the middle picture is so lovely with Rex Kular and his auntie. They're talking about a story and trying to figure out what all the words mean so they can do translations. This kind of thing is happening all through Manipur. And so communities are working on this, but what's happening to the products of what they're doing? Where are those things? And how can they make sure that their children can make use of them, right? So this is why what they have done so far is done what's been readily available. That is, they have done Facebook, YouTube, and so on. But these platforms are ephemeral. That is, any day. You saw that Facebook has changed to Meta. Instagram was bought by Facebook. These things keep changing. And you may think that everything is safe where it is, but it can move because these are commercial products. So what we would like to suggest is this is fantastic for communities to have control over their things and how they look, but they need to be in a safe storage place that isn't movable, right? That no one else, so a library is really good for that. And here in India, we're slowly gaining that facility where library infrastructure, digital infrastructure, can take in things like audio and video, maybe scans of books, and keep them available so that people can check them out by going online and just kind of saying, I would like to look at this, and you can download and look at it. But we're not yet there. We have one really good digital archive, and that's Sidhela. It's in Sikkim, right? For some of the 4 big languages that people work there, endangered languages. And then I believe Central Institute of Indian Languages is right now creating an archive of their previously collected materials. And once it's there, they can then start doing. So we are getting there. My concern is that we are not there yet. And these languages are every day eroding and getting lost, and they're losing things. We don't have time to really wait. And so we need to do things like fight against flood, earthquake, and fire. This is actually no joke. Like, many of you know Marjing, right? Marjing Mayanglambam. He came to the US as our first archivist in residence. We invited him to come and document the language of the Pena. Bring your materials. So he did bring materials, but we found out that 2 of the precious VHS tapes that he brought were moldy, and they were not recoverable. We were able to recover 1, but 2 of them are gone. So even if you feel like I've kept it safely in my cupboard, it's locked up, the environment doesn't care. Mother Nature doesn't care. So we need to think, if we really want to preserve for the future the culture of, wherever community we come from, we need to think about it now, and libraries can help us with that. Usually libraries are nonprofit, and they're not motivated by profit. They open their doors and they say, we have our infrastructure, you're able to use our facility to do what you want. And that's what we're doing at the University of North Texas, and I'll say more about that. But the idea would be to have lots of copies. Have your own copy, but have a copy somewhere else as well. And you can have 2 digital copies. I spoke to a Boro a scholar at the Northeast Indian Linguistic Society. We were just there in Guwahati just now, and he said he wanted to have something in the Lancaster corpus, and he wanted to have it in Corso. No problem. put things in multiple places. And so if you're in India, what I would say is, let's create a site here for you that you can control, have a digital copy here, but make sure you put it in also in a place that is more permanent. What we would like to do then is have preservation of content that is permanent, useful for the future, and also one where you can access it easily. So what we did is we created this it's a language archive, basically. It's called the Computational Resource for South Asian Languages. It's a very big name. My initial idea was that if we could collect, because I'm a linguist, right? So my idea was, I want to learn more about languages. If I can collect something about Meiteran and about one of the languages from Chandel, what we now call South Central languages. Previously, they were called Kuki-Chin, now we're calling them South Central. If you can collect those, maybe I can compare across them and learn more about language. That's why we called it computational resource. We want to have comparable sets of information. So but it's really an open archive for anybody who wants to use it. It could be a scientist, it could be an artist, it could be a young person who says, I want all of my grandma's stories to be held. It could be Imasi Foundation's materials. It can be anyone who says, I want to be part of this goal of preserving for the future and also sharing with other people. So what are our priorities here? We want to make it as easy as possible for you to do this. So we have set up our workflow so it's very easy to deposit. And we provide training for language communities. Many of you have come to those or have taught in them. And Bishen, we've done virtually for your students, and and so on. But we do training so the students learn how to do this. And we are very much interested in findability and reusability. If you put something, like Imasi has a very good digital footprint. You can Google and find things. But if I was from a smaller group, like supposing I'm Murring or something, and I put a Murring story up, and I try to Google that, it'll be very hard for Google to find it because no one has worked on optimizing that particular item. But the digital library, those materials, they are constantly optimizing Google search. So if you take your phone and you type in Rex Kular Lamkang, the first 2 or 3 things will come from the digital library on your search. So those, what Corso is working off of is that the digital library has been doing that work for all their collections, and so we benefit. So reusability is only possible by you or me if we can find it. And that's the good thing about the library, is it helps us find things. I know all of us have done Googling, right? And we're all frustrated when we can't find something, but this is something that I think is a really plus point for the archive. Okay, so each of the items has like information that is very scant. It's not a huge amount of information, but it's the basic information so the next generation of people can find out more about it and can find out how to use it. I just want to show you the Boro archive. So we've got a collection of Manipuri things, but that's really just my own personal field notes, and I don't think it's as exciting as when a community member puts their things in. That's much more interesting. The Boro archives have a number of things in there. The Boro collection, it should really say. These are the 3 gentlemen who have really been spearheading that. They're all linguists and graduates from, at one time or another, from University of Gauhati, and they've worked with their communities to put in things. And it's a nice size collection, and it keeps growing. And it has in it dances, it has newspaper articles, it has stories, oral stories, it has conversations, and there are different audiences that would be interested in those different things. So if you decide to create a collection, it would be because of your interest. So supposing we have a Manipuri collection in there, you're interested in dance or music or literature, you'd put that in. But somebody else may be interested in all the traditional folk tales. All the Pungawaris can go in there as well. Somebody else can go, Bijain may be interested in something else. So it would become the Bijain collection or the Somi Roy collection, or whoever it is, they would have, under the big Manipuri collection, there would be a sub-collection with your name on it. Pramodini might have all of her data sets from her years of working on the language as a linguist. So that could be Pramodini Devi's collection as well. So you don't get lost in it. Your collection becomes part of the big pot of that. Nice thing is you can go in and listen online to all the audio. You can stream the video. And if you want to, you can ask them for copies of everything. So the way the way this is usually done is that people, get together with native speakers, or nowadays native speakers are doing this on their own. They're working with their communities to record, create transcriptions and translations, and then using those for things like writing textbooks. And we try to get involved in all of those goals. So I think you're maybe familiar with these goals that people have for indigenous, smaller populations, but perhaps it's also true for Meiteran that we think there are some traditions that are dying out, right? And so those things could be increase the number of people who know about them. Maybe daughters who are living in Bangalore or are in Florida forget how to cook certain ironbas or whatever. You want your recipes to be saved. So this is a good place to do that kind of personal saving as well. Okay, so what we're trying to do is to teach people how to do some language documentation, at least the beginning part, like how do you record? How do you use a good recorder? How do you use video? I'm not an expert in that at all. I don't know how to do that very well, but the second step I can do, which is how do you transcribe it? And that, with the audio, video, and the transcription, we're already like so far ahead, because then somebody else can come and do the translation and do the analysis part of it. But we just need the audio and some basic transcription, and I think some translation at least. Okay. So we are trying to get people to get used to using our archives for their purposes. So if you have students, for example, like we've been talking about your students putting material in, now Marjing has Pena stuff in there. And hopefully we can then your students can come back and use those for their studies. Like you can give them homework assignments. Go look at 6, 7, and 8 on the catalog and tell us about what you learn about, I don't know, horsehairs that are used for pena bows or something like that, whatever it is that they can learn. This is a huge resource for us to teach people about Manipuri culture and history. That is not possible by books, because books, they have to go to a library. Many of our students don't have that facility to go and spend an hour in the library. But with their phones, they can access this material. So we think that language archives can serve many communities, and that includes our student populations who want to learn. So there are many people who are audiences for that. It could be from lots of different disciplines. It's not just music, not just literature, not just history. But if I want to know about healing and traditional medicine, I might go back and learn about it from here, and so on. Teachers who want to teach language, that's a big interest of mine. I'm really interested in using language archives for language teaching and seeing how that works. So these are just, I just put these in so you could see that, even photographs that come in, they have enough detail sometimes to look not just at what the word means and the definition, but then people can also put in the uses and learn a little bit about culture through that. This is another Lamkan example. Okay, so a woman weaving, that's not that interesting if it's just like that, but if you can answer all those questions, all of a sudden the archive is asking you to put metadata in. And in that process, you are doing documentation, and you're also becoming really reinterested in your culture. Like you may not even know, you may have to go and ask grandma, why do we put the red thread like this again? Because you're trying to build your metadata. So I find that archiving is actually like a really rejuvenating process for people. They can get very much engaged in what they're doing when they're trying to build information about it. So they're answering these questions for metadata, but then they're also making themselves really interested in what they're doing. Here's some more questions they can ask. So we use these in our training when we're helping people learn about metadata. So another question that I really like asking is then and now. What was it like before when you were a child and you went fishing? And what is it like now? Where do you get your fish from? And in that question, all of a sudden you get a whole bunch of information about environmental change in migration information, or asking the then and now question is a great one for interviews. Then we can archive the interviews and people can study them for different reasons. These are some mistakes that people make, like word lists written separately, word lists written together, misspelling language. This is about metadata and doing a good job. It's really good for students when they do this. They learn a lot about like doing meticulous work, and okay, this is something Somi asked me to talk about, and it's the last thing I'm going to talk about. So when I go around and I talk about this, linguists especially will say, I can't put my material up there. Somebody will steal it from me, like a burglar in the night. They're going to come and take it away. They'll scoop me and I'll never get a job anywhere, right? And so the idea is, I can, and you know, that's our Indian culture also. And I think it's maybe human nature. Like if I have something and I put it outside, have I lost it? Like it's not mine anymore. Now it's all of ours. How can that be? I'm the one who collected it. So fair enough. That makes some sense. But there's some problems with that because we're talking about open access. We're not talking about open source. Okay, so this is one distinction. Open access means like, okay, Somi has published a bunch of books on Penguin and they're sold in bookstores. So you get some residuals from that. It's not like, you're getting some residuals, so you're not giving it away. But that knowledge that's in that books is certainly going to all the people who are buying the books and they're reading it. And we feel okay with that. That's what we understand. That's what we've been born with, thinking that's fine. Then our stuff is safe. This is pretty much the same thing. It's just that we don't get the money from the selling of the book. It's also available to people in exactly the same way as if I went and bought the book from a bookstore. But here I'm just looking at it online and or downloading it. And there are a few instances where you were talking about my grammar, right? There are a few instances where I have seen pieces of my grammar copied into papers. When I reviewed them and I've had to say, the sounds looks very familiar. Could this possibly have been cited? This has come from Chelia 1997 as an anonymous reviewer. It can happen with a published thing. People can steal that as well. So putting something up here that's digital, online, and free of charge is not something that's massively different or strange. Open access does not give them the right to take that and change it and publish it themselves. Open source is a little bit different. Open source is like, supposing I make a game, right? And I put the code, the program, or the instructions that the programmer puts together for how the game is going to work. I can put that code open so that you can take it and you can change it and make the colors different or make the sound different, and then you can publish it or share it in a different way. That's open source. Open access is for fair use. You cannot take it and sell it, but you can use it for educational purposes. And this is what we use for copyright, fair use. Fair use, like if I have a book, you're allowed to copy a certain percentage of the papers, but you're going to use it for non-commercial purposes and only for educational purposes. That's what, or you can use it for your personal purpose as well. Okay, your work is really protected. Oh, thank you. I had some water there as well. Thank you so much. So let me just tell you, I don't want to get too professorial. Maybe I've already bored you and I'm already professorial, but okay, I won't get more professorial, but I want to we'll learn a little bit today about the difference between copyright and intellectual property rights, trademark, and patent. You know all those four things, right? So just in general, I just say overall, intellectual property rights is like a huge umbrella term. And underneath that, there's copyright law, patent law, trademark law. And so we sometimes confuse all of those three things. And copyright changes from country to country, and each country they're very similar. They have they're definitely similar reasons that they exist. But this is just US copyright law, but is similar from other countries as well. It is very much focused on tangible things like a book. Or if you have a dance performance and everything is very carefully choreographed and you've written down like this is first, that can be said to be copyrighted. But if I have something like an interpretive dance, like I put on a music and I say you need to like sway right and left or do it, that's not copywritten. It has to be more tangible than that. And so it's really what we're used to, like paper is some, things that we publish on paper is what we use for copyright. But it can be architectural work, sound recordings, and so on. One thing that's very typical of copyright that has a duration. So like for the US, it's the life of the author plus 70 years. After that, the copyright is no longer valid. So, and there are other rules of that sort. I think that may have changed. The years may have changed on that, but I've not checked on it. Things that are not copied, not copyright protected, are things like, an idea. Like, I had a great idea, and I'm sitting with you in coffee, and I tell you about it. Next thing I turn around, you've already decided to create something like that yourself. That, oops, I shouldn't have done that, because that was not copyrighted and it's not protected because it was an idea or a fact. Except that's really mean. Why would you do that to me, right? We shouldn't do that to each other, but sometimes it happens. But procedures and methods, processes. So these are some of these like methods, and especially if they end in an invention, those would be under patent law, not under copyright law. Anything that's in the public domain already, like Constitution or something like that, I don't think there's a copyright on it because everyone already owns it. It's like commonly known and available. These are some rights under copyright. You have the economic right. These are really important. These are basically you have the economic right, and you have the financial reward of that item. That's for copyright. And moral right. It's like your interest in your personal relationship. You have a relationship with your work, and that should not be violated. So that person who stole my idea, they didn't necessarily go against a written copyright, but they've gone against this moral right, which they may be able to then go to court of law and talk about it. The thing is that the thing where we're concerned about here, like stories and storytelling, there is no really good law about storytelling, especially indigenous storytelling. Ezekiel may know more about this because UNESCO's been involved with this, but the WIPO, or the World Intellectual Property Organization, has been working on intellectual property rights for indigenous knowledge. And they state, so they have this really nice set of statements, and you can Google WIPO leaflets or WIPO statements, and you can see so like in the 1990s is when it really started. They started having meetings to talk about indigenous groups and what are indigenous groups' rights and so on, right? So then I think in 2000 they came up with like case studies of Ezekiel, were you ever involved in UNESCO of that? No. You recognize it. But so what they're saying is that the creations of mind, such as inventions, literary, artistic works, symbols, names, images used in commerce, okay, these things are covered. So let's just look at this. This is from their leaflet number 12. Indigenous intellectual property includes the information, practices, beliefs, philosophy that are unique to each indigenous culture. Once traditional knowledge is removed from an indigenous community, the community loses control over the way in which that knowledge is used. In most cases, the system of knowledge evolved over many centuries. It's unique to the indigenous peoples, customs, traditions, resources. Indigenous peoples have the right to protect their intellectual property, including the right to protect that property against its inappropriate use or exploitation. And this is something that we may not always think about as linguists. As linguists, we're like, well, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to study their language, I'm going to take their stories, and I'm going to make a grammar and a dictionary, and that's that, right? That's how we've been trained. And now we're trained to think, wait a minute, that is an intellectual property of the community, and it has come down, and we need to think about it in slightly different ways now. And what the whole field of linguistics is moving towards is community collaboration and actually community down work on languages rather than outside people initiating the study, specifically, I think, because of this idea. And so I think I'm going to go to my last slide because I want to talk about that. Let's see. Yeah, these are their goals: protection of expressions of folklore, traditional knowledge, and things like genetic resources, and sharing benefits of studies of that. But here's what I would like you to close with and think about this idea. You remember that slide here? Let's go back to that slide. Oh, you want to take a picture? Go ahead. Yeah. And see on the bottom, you can Google that and it'll give you the whole PDF. It's like 6 pages long or so. So they're saying that indigenous peoples have the right to protect their intellectual property. And the question I would like to ask you is, what do we think that means for each of us when we say we want to protect our intellectual property? I think that if we shy away from archiving because we think it's somehow the other guy's tool and they're taking something from me, we are giving up a huge opportunity to, in fact, protect our intellectual property, like the margin VHS tapes. We don't want to go on that side of err on the side of being too scared to join this game. Let's beat them at their own game is what I'm saying. Let's use all the tools we have to save our languages, and let's not be afraid of using this, and work with an archive that will give you your name and your intention the primary focus rather than their name and their intention. So I think that this is looking at things that have happened in Native America, where a Native community has a name like Apache, and they use Apache for Apache helicopter, Apache, they misuse the name in a way, and people say like, how come you're using our name? Like all of the football teams, they would have Native American names, and the football guys would have like mascots, right? Dressed up funny, and they'd come out, and the Native Americans in the group would say, how come you're using our name and our culture in this kind of ridiculous way, making buffoons of us? Stop doing that. That's not what I think. That is really true. That's true. We shouldn't, but let's also turn this around and take advantage of what they're saying. Let us protect our intellectual property by thinking about long-term preservation. And the best way of doing that, I think, I have found with students, a really good way of doing that is to have them think about archiving. They collect something, immediately start thinking about archiving. Get the metadata, ask an archivist. It doesn't have to be us, but certainly we would be so happy to have all the languages of Manipur in one place, because it will increase the traffic to the other languages. So if people come to look at Manipuri, they may come to look at Lamkang, then they'll say, oh, there's also Anal. Hey, what's happening in Monsang? If you disperse it in different places, it's less. So put it all in the same place is what I think. But archiving is a means to reaching our preservation goals and our access goals for our communities. So in our panel, when we have our panel, Umarani, I will try to address those things that are in the questions. Okay, but I'll leave it now as question marks, and I'll stop for now, and I think I'll not take questions, but we'll have a discussant, right? We may have both. Would you have any questions? Okay. Would you like to go first? And then, yeah.
It was really wonderful presentation, and we have known lots of new things related to copyrights also. I think this is one of the most important part for Manipur nowadays. In any fields related to intangible culture and heritage, like clothes, the patterns of clothes, and production of foods like umorok and many things, we have issues in Manipur. So in that case, it's a very need to know, it's even very urgent to know that what kind of things given by these copyright issues, and what is the importance for archiving such thing as with one particular and standard format, which is known by these institutions or some authorized department. So this Korsal is of course one of the very best, I think, option for us to archive very easily and freely with open source. And as Madam told us that we also would like to put open for some questions for this discussion hours. If any participant has any question to raise, please kindly raise now with the speaker.
Yeah.
Please.
I was wondering, when you talk about uniqueness of the culture and then asking for intellectual rights over there, can there be a problem in defining that uniqueness? When in case of India, where we see that things travel across and there is a kind of responsive reception. So do you think that can occur, or if it has occurred, how it is finalized?
So if I understand, you're saying,
When we say the claim of uniqueness itself can be highly problematic.
the weakness,
Uniqueness, unique.
the claim of uniqueness, because how do you define uniqueness,
Yes,
right?
because that is the statement I happened to read
Yeah,
in the context of
Right.
that.
right. How do you define something that is unique? And
Because in India, things travel, and not only in India, globally we do. So
yeah, I can see certain places where this might be a problem. Like I think David's going to talk.
There can be a dispute, like
Yeah, there could be, like if there's a similar story that's all across a belt and they're very same, then how do we define which cultures it
there
is?
they mentioned it's all about the question of identity, which is very fixed. But it's a very modern way of looking at the world. Now that world is over.
Yeah,
We are in a so-called postmodern,
yeah.
but India has always been postmodern.
India's always been like at a different place in time,
Our
right?
postmodern
Yeah.
scenario has been there from the time of the Mahabharata.
Yeah. So let me ask the question, same thing, but let's look at it from the perspective of the community member. Community member identifies with some stories and says, these are from my community, and puts them in an archive and puts their name on it. Another community member from a different community could have the same stories, but in their language. And there need not be really a conflict because each one is being told in a different way by a different person, different language. Although the storyline may be similar, that actually does happen. We do have like these belts of stories that are similar. But if it comes from the community identity, they're not really saying, I want money for this, or that this is the only thing that I'm identifying, but this is something I've heard my parents say, or it's part of my lived experience. So how can you argue against that?
Subtract the economic angle from it, because the next step to that is maybe it is commodified. I can see that commodification of oral literature or orality has been there. So once you claim that this is not good, that's happened with books also.
It definitely happens with books.
And it comes with responsibility, the whole identity of author. And we remember Foucault telling us that author is a modern concept.
Right.
So likewise, when we claim something ours, we are saying that the next step is we can commodify it, we can sell it. The economic factor comes in.
Yeah.
So the moment you subtract, I don't get it.
Right. And definitely there's this danger or I don't know if it's a danger. I would think of it as an advantage, but let's put it this way, okay? These languages, let's take your comment in this backdrop. These languages and their cultures are going very steadily. We may not realize it. Like there may be between 5,000 and 10,000 Lamkang at the most. COVID got rid of a lot of the elders. A lot of the stories have gone now. And luckily, we have some of them in our archives. People have said to me, thank goodness you got Uncle so-and-so's story. That is my primary kind of observation, that the culture, the communities themselves desperately want these things to be preserved. Yes, you're right. There are things that we need to think about. Maybe now there'll be a youngster who decides he's going to download all of those stories, put them in a book and sell them as his own. We need to have some rules against that. Actually, we would not provide that unless we had letters from a community literature society that they were going to be using them. There has to be some control over that. But the other side of not doing anything is this side of losing everything. And we've seen that happen many times in Native America. We don't need to have that happen here. So that would be what I would say, let's think of first. And then the second, let's try to address the fact if commodification can happen, why shouldn't it happen? Why can't somebody take it and make a textbook out of it, but with the permission of some body at the community level, like a literature society, and have maybe they can set the rules. Maybe each story has to be labeled as from Uncle so-and-so, Auntie this and that, so that it is giving credit to those people as having told the story. Maybe the money can't go all to the person who's made it. Maybe the community will go against that. I don't know the rules for that, but I do know that if you don't do anything, there won't be anything to commodify and there won't be anything to save. That's the problem. And I think we as linguists have experienced this when we talk to speakers. You know how we know it? We ask them some questions, they can't think of the words. People have forgotten how to say that. They said, I'm working with Rex Kullar on a Lamkang dictionary. He's on WhatsApp a lot asking Uncle so-and-so, what was that word again? the knowledge is going away because we're not using the language a lot. So we realize that that should be maybe, that's what linguists think anyway, that should be primary. I see linguists nodding anyway. I don't know, let's talk some more, and somebody else had a question.
For me, that
Yeah.
culture is not an archiving culture. The archiving culture is very much a Western force or something like it's ingrained in their nature. In India, suppose you talk about, okay, by archiving, I'm preserving the practice. But preserving the practice, you are just preserving the discourse. I mean, practice needs the body, human body, and human body is not there. So you
Right.
are completely ignoring the importance of human practice.
The
human doesn't exist in your case.
You're making such a good point. It is an excellent point that people have made previously. I have two responses. Thank you for listening to my responses. Sorry. Two responses. One is that we cannot let the Western world kind of take over technology and not let us use it. We can't say that's Western, I'm not going to use it, because this technology is like Amazon Cloud or Google Space. Don't we use those things? Why should we let this technology go away and then not take advantage of it? Most of these things that we as Indians, probably many Manipuris, work in the tech sector and have helped develop some of these technologies. This technology is useful for us. We shouldn't let it go just because it's something that other people are also using. The second, I had a really good thing I wanted to say to you. Second part of it, I've forgotten what it is. But we come back to it. We'll come back to it.
Ignoring the human presence.
The human presence. Okay, very quick story. Okay, this is a quick story for you. There was the language Miamia that was, please Google when you have Daryl Baldwin, when you have a chance. This language was completely silent. Nobody was speaking it. He decided he wanted to relearn it and have touch with his culture. He went to an archive, a Western archive, yes, collected by Western people, yes, but he relearned the language with the help of a linguist. There is now Miamia classes being taught in Ohio in that college. It is a wonderful example of why an archive can be evil. Yes, colonizers took our stuff and put them in museums. That was bad. We're creating our own museum now, on our own terms. You create it. You decide as a Mizo. Tangi has put stuff in Korsel. She decided what was going to go in there. And she decided what she thought was important. So let us not like get rid of the baby with the bathwater. That's what I would say. But the Miamia story is really important. The human touch can come in later. You can also Google breath of life. That is when people go to archives and breathe life into the archives with their community and relearn about their languages and cultures. That would not be possible without that. Yeah, Tangi.
I think,
a couple of quick comments. Intellectual property rights.
Yeah.
I think the Northeast is waking up to that, especially in terms of like medicine or plants.
Yeah.
So a lot of communities have, I forget what the term is. So it's, so someone else can use that.
Yeah.
And the other is in weaving patterns of cloth. Each tribe has their very own weaving patterns. And I've seen people call out big designers in India for using their design and taking them to court. So, people are very sensitive about that. So each in the Mizo tribe, we have a lot of different types of weaving, and each design is very unique and has a story. And somebody uses for a kurta and they sell it, in some big famous designer, and I've seen them being taken to court for that. So,
Yeah.
So even the dances, like Mizo has a traditional bamboo dance that's
Right.
also protected.
Right.
So so we can use it to our advantage. Make people aware of that.
Yeah.
So
Put it out there. Put your name on it.
yeah.
And I think the thing about weaving designs and stuff, like I'm just amazed how you can, you see something and you go like, oh, that's Maring, or it's just wonderful. I want to learn how to do that. But if we put it out there and we put a stamp on it, and then people are told how to cite things, and people are told on an archive, this is intellectual property. This is how you protect yourself in a way. Because if it's just out there,
And
then
the commercial designers can't use it.
and then they
this is
just grab
actually,
it. We have
sorry
go.
to
Yeah.
give some supplement. This is very sorry for us for not having kind of registration thing. So government of India also already been given lots of property rights acts, for patents acts, for design acts, 2020. We also got design act. among the IPR, within the IPR. Then we also have trademarks acts. We also have these patents is using for only 20 years, I think. So once we register as applicant for with some things which we newly invented, once we fill up some forms for registration, that should belong to that particular inventor. Like we have 20 years. And another thing, the geographical indications also we do have mentions. Like lots of GI text is required nowadays. So unless until we register things with particular objects, is also kind of archiving things. The process is just register. That should belong to that particular person and community. This is the main thing what we have been losing in the Northeast nowadays. So kindly next, L.Somi would like to raise some questions.
I just want to add to Kishan's point about the human body and about the people who are the memory keepers, the keepers of tradition. This is exactly one of the things that the listener is hoping to do. Not so much to do, but to start the conversation. We want to valorize, it's a word that when we were developing the proposal, I love that word. We valorize
Valorizing, yeah.
storytellers,
Yeah.
the memory keepers. And this is the only way that we can respond to technology and its incursions into our lives. Like you said, Google, Meta. There was a nice picture of Marco, whom I have no fond feelings for, though I do not know him. Okay? So they're coming into our lives, whether we like it or not. And I think we need to be a part of the process. We need to have a control over what we do, and if we do not do that, we'll have no control whatsoever. So it is more important simply because working with small, local, regional cultures, like when I met you, I was coming to Appalachia.
Right.
I was working in Appalachia with the hill people of the US. And the question then, as well as now, is how do small cultures survive in this age of globalization? And how do small cultures contribute to the conversation? I'm very, very fond of Alan Lomax, the one who collected all the songs. Alan Lomax, without whom Bob Dylan would not have been possible, without whom the Rolling Stones would not have been possible. There's no musicologist. He says every culture needs their fair share of electronic time. Now, he was talking in 1972 about cultural equity, and that was before the internet. So we have to give a little bit of period fidelity in this. So he's talking about electronic time. It could be digital time.
Right.
It could be AI time tomorrow.
Right.
You know, but it's very important to participate. And when we try to invite people here, Ruben Mashangwa has just arrived. I got a message. Wow. I mean, look at what he has done, what he's doing. So we need to valorize these people, support them, recognize them, and not just having a Padma Shri given from New Delhi. The support has to come from the whole community.
That's right. Yeah.
And then we include the human body and performance. This is why we have live performance in this festival. Thank you.
I'd just
Thank
like
you.
to
Yes.
comment on what Tami was saying about textiles. In Nagaland, we have this community called the Chakasang. Around 2018, they got 20 of their designs GI'd. It was around 2020 when there was this huge fashion show in Delhi, and the fashion show was, a design, collection came out, and this was set up by Ritu Berry. So there was absolutely no credit to the designs from which she had lifted, and it was passed off as her own. Till today, the community, they have an ongoing case with Ritu Berry. I am told that she has not responded to the charges, and so it's still alive. Also, around that time, there was this another designer who came from Chandigarh, I think, and she had been working with the community because they have this tradition of nettle weaving. So she came in and she was working with them for a few years. Once she left that environment, now she's on the net, passing off all the textiles.
Wow.
Like she taught the community how to weave nettle textile.
Wow.
So you see, the Chakisang Women Welfare Association, they again slammed the court case against her.
Right.
Also, even among our, the local designers, one of them had copied their design and passed it off as her own. And so she was also hauled up. So I think, the best way of protecting ourselves is to go for IPR, GI, and I know that in Manipur, the Sami Lami shawl is already GI, I think a few years ago, and GI is 10 years.
This is a big problem for all the ethnic communities of the northeastern state of India. This has happened in every state of northeast. Happened in Manipur, happened in Mizoram, happened in Nagaland. Many small tribes it's happened. In Manipur also, as you talk, this is we call roving fee. That was a big issue when our respected Honorable PM Modi started wearing that shawl, and after then it became a state issue for us also.
Right.
And not only for that, lots of medicinal plants and related to that replica and some clothes design and some prints and that things. We have not only for clothes, it is also losing for lots of pottery items, lot of utensils used in the tribal communities, small tribes. Now they started taking some pictures and some digital archives and documentation, and lots of designers comes up in the big Bollywood and Hollywood platforms with lots of models. They try to show it as their own. That is the main issue. That is why I also personally mentioned before that we need to have a habit of registering things. And the government of any states among the northern states like Manipur also need to take a very important steps for discovering these old things and record it as official. That is the only way to save these old copyright issues. Some institutions might be doing, but that should be very subjective and very limited period of time, and they have a limited research objectives. If that some things happen, if they found during their research field and all field work, they will still ignore it because that is beyond their topic. So government has no topics specific like that. So they are working on the interest of community, in the interest of people, and the public interest. That is why that might cover it up. So next, once again, L.Somi want to raise one more question, please.
I know that I'm the one who brought up this question and asked you to talk about open access, universal access, and also the question of intellectual property rights. These are a great concern to me. But allow me to argue against myself.
Okay.
I also think that the moment an artist creates a work of art, it has a life of its own, and the author really cannot control it anymore. This is a fact of the matter. The reason why Mr. Modi was wearing the scarf is because he liked it. He liked it, and yes, it has political messaging in it, we know that, but he was given that scarf. He didn't go out and buy it. I know that the Chief Minister insists that every dignitary that comes to Manipur for any kind of government event has to be given that particular scarf. And it is only much later, after this practice, because I know I do polo, and the Department of Tourism insists on doing that. I'm like, okay, fine. no big deal. But it's only after that, after a while, that Modi, yes, there's activist policy thinking involved, there's the BJP elections in Nagaland involved in the messaging, but he liked it because it was given the scarf. This lady here is appropriating tribal
Forced appropriation.
design here, because I gave it to her.
That's right.
Now,
But I chose to wear
Imasi
it
Foundation
today.
gave it to
You gave it to me yesterday, but I chose it to wear today. It's out of my own will. And
yes. So has she appropriated it?
She's
Is this
celebrating
usage?
it.
And suppose this can actually be stretched.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Okay? And you can also reshape it. And if you want to, you can put it on the upper arm also. Okay? They created a name, but I forgot. Now, how she chooses to do that is up to her. This is designed by Rosalind Kongsai. Kongjai, meaning cookie,
Kongsai.
tribal designer. I love her work.
This is some tribes like Kongsai and Puimei, some Naga tribes use. This is this is a like of
So when I
rings.
bought this, I said, because I've given this once before as a gift to someone very special, some years back. And I said, oh, this is the one made in Kesampat by the Meitei women, right? And she says, no, we don't buy it from them, we make it ourselves in our tribe. So that Manipuri woman in Kesampat who's making this, it's not her property, intellectual property, artistic property.
Just thought it was cool, yeah.
It's cool,
Yeah.
you know. So it's a very difficult, very crucial, it's a delicious subject for discussion and contemplation. But
Yeah, let's
appropriation is the one.
Yeah, during the panel, I'll talk about how language is a little bit different than than these items because of the need for stories and so on to really understand the language so that we can write our grammar so that those can go into teaching materials. If there's a cycle there that needs to be, but last question to promote.
Yeah.
It was a very informative book. Say, like the way you have said it, copyright, plagiarism, and all those things.
Yeah,
Part of your grammar was lifted to somebody else's book,
yeah,
right?
Yep.
Or articles.
An
paper
article,
article.
yeah.
But then it so happened that several times, the thesis, the kind of content which I have in my thesis have been lifted completely and, they're published in their own.
yeah.
So I think this one is a very, good platform in the sense that we can somehow, protect our.
Yeah, you know what? Then
Yeah.
people, then
Because
if you,
it so happens that, let me just continue.
Yeah,
It so happens
please.
that, Manipur being a very small place, you know each other so well.
Yeah.
And it's become very sensitive to talk to them that you have looked at the passes, you have looked at my interpretation, all those things. You can't really say that also. So it becomes
Interesting.
really sensitive.
Yeah.
And very unfortunate because sometimes, it so happens that some of my, contents have been lifted completely and they're published.
wow, yeah. When it's online, you can run programs
Yeah.
to see if it's actually been lifted. So it's actually helpful sometimes
Yeah,
to
that's
have it
why-
online to run a
that's why
program to do it, yeah. Yeah, people have some
No, those were
chutzpah is what it's called, yeah.
In
Okay, I think
between,
we have to
I
stop
think
now.
we have a very
Yeah.
nice discussion.
Yeah.
And before ending it, this is sometimes the copyright officers making things is related to business also, trademarks, benchmark, lots of things happen. And for academic purpose, for example, like which is very valued, like aesthetic values, which is very abstractual, that is very difficult to be maintained as a copyright. But for the things which is found to be in the market or as a solid thing, that is very easy to do thing register. But for abstractual things, some intellectuals or some performing arts or lots of things, it's very difficult to identify it. Like the first questions asked is the questions of uniqueness comes, and what is the difference between the first object and second object. That should be the unending discussion, I think. So that should be the closing session for this first session. Is the time is flying very soon. So the next speaker and performer is also waiting outside.
Excellent.
So I think I would like to thank once again Professor Shobhana Chelia for giving this wonderful session in the first of this workshop. And once again, I would like to thank all the participants and being here today and sharing this full session with a wonderful discussion. And I would like to close this session here for today. Thank you.
Thank you so
all
much.
of you.
Thank you.